This video is going to be split into two parts. The first being about Lightfall and my overall thoughts on it. The second being about the future of Destiny 2. Both being the final shape and beyond it. There's going to be a timestamp on the screen now. Skip to that if you want to get past the Lightfall ramble and get into what the video is meant to be about. It's really hard for me at face value to give a solid take on Lightfall. After finishing it, I felt really conflicted. On one hand, I absolutely loved the expansion and what it had to offer. Playing through it on launch, I had an absolute blast. And on the other hand, I was left really dissatisfied and overwhelmingly disappointed at the project Bungie delivered. Lightfall was probably the most hyped up expansion thus far. It's the second to last chapter of the saga, the beginning of the end, and as the title alluded, the fall of the light. Now, Lightfall's story, this is where most people had the biggest issue with the expansion, and the narrative of the expansion was pretty empty after replaying it. On release, I was very excited. I boldly claimed that I loved the narrative and I thought it was great, and then I kinda realised the case of no fuck all after being very true. The opening mission of the expansion, just as they always are with every season and expansion launch, was fucking brilliant. Bungie never missed with these and I stand by it. The entire story in the expansion follows like this though. The Witness is beefing with the Traveler, Callus is searching for the expansion MacGuffin known as the Veil, Osiris is angry and the Guardians learning Strand to beat Callus and stop the Witness. But we get manipulated, just like in the Witch Queen guys, it happened again. Oops. That's the gist of it. The missions themselves are fun, I genuinely enjoyed playing through them and I replayed it on my Warlock and my Titan, and I still enjoyed replaying it then. The missions themselves genuinely are fun, and that just comes down to the core gameplay of Destiny being fun to play, mindlessly of course. But the narrative throughout each mission just wasn't that great, and the exception being the opening and final missions. Everything in between was just a chase the MacGuffin story, and we never learnt a single thing about the Veil, even after the end of the main story. I like Neomuna. Neomuna's really pretty looking, it's fun to play in, it's a very nice space, but holy shit dude, it is empty. It feels so lifeless. I don't care about the whole cope of the Cloud Arc stuff, like the digital conscience. It's disappointing that we get a super cool sci-fi city, and there's nothing beyond a 9-foot tall cyber surfer. The weapons and armor that came with Lightfall were pretty cool. As you've probably seen, I always use Quicksilver Storm. It is my all-time favorite exotic, and that's how that is. I love the designs of the weapons that came with Lightfall, especially the Warlock helmet that you get from the campaign. The Neomuna Warlock helmet is fucking awesome, no one can tell me otherwise. And if I'm complimenting a class that isn't Hunter, you should know it means it's done well. The Hypernet Current Strike, it's pretty cool, there's nothing else really to speak on it. But the raid, oh boy, Root of Nightmares. It was fucking great, I loved it. The design of the raid and the environments are the best we've ever had in any raid thus far. The idea surrounding the raid and the environmental narrative of the Silver Seed growing through the pyramid as we push back the darkness was absolutely spectacular. The visuals were peak, but the difficulty. I did it on day 1, contest mode. Supposedly the hardest thing Destiny has to offer. The fact that I beat it on contest mode should tell you it just wasn't balanced, properly anyway, and the difficulty wasn't there at all. Beyond that though, the raid was fucking amazing. Absolute banger raid. Loved it. Great. Fucking great. Strand is my favourite addition to Destiny, period. If you give me a fucking grappling hook, the fun factor of any game increases tenfold. Strand adds a whole new style of mobility gameplay to the combat loop, and it works amazingly both in PvE and PvP. The overall addition of Strand, unlike Stasis, doesn't break the loop, but instead speeds it up. Stasis at launch was unmatched, it was uncounterable, it was unfair. Stasis at launch slowed the game down. Crucible was dominated by freezing everything to win. Strand's whole gimmick is tether and move. Grapple and swing, both in a literal sense, swinging through the air, but also throwing your fucking hands after grappling. Strand is great. Definitely the best part of the expansion, hands down. But again, Lightfall's narrative, it just didn't deliver, and that's why myself and many others were left very disappointed. It's one of the driving concerns for the future of Destiny 2. Lightfall was the second to last chapter of the Light and Dark saga. Lightfall was the setup, really, to be our failure before our greatest comeback. Lightfall was set to deliver something else, or at least that's how it feels. But in the end, we were left with more questions and absolutely no answers, and that leads me into the reason I'm making this video. Destiny 2's concerning future. The content we've received with Destiny 2 has been very mixed, to say the least. Destiny 2 Vanilla wasn't that great, and it wasn't until Warmind people really felt it was worth playing. Forsaken was amazing, it had little flaws. Shadowkeep wasn't that great, it really wasn't. It was the first case of too many questions and no answers, and it wasn't until Season of the Arrivals where we finally got our first question answered, which was the pyramid ships, what are they? And we found out the Black Fleet, they're the bad guys. Beyond Light was a filler expansion. It was fun, yes. Deepstone Crypt was awesome, Europa is awesome, but it served no purpose beyond introducing us to the power of the darkness. The seasons following Beyond Light, Season of the Chosen, it set up Keitel, and that story was great. Season of the Splicer set up House of Light, that was great. Season of the Lost set up half a year of waiting for Witch Queen. A pretty cool story came with it about the Awoken, but it wasn't really relevant. The story of breaking Savathun's seal really took a backseat until the end. And then Witch Queen launched. Witch Queen was near amazing, the Throne World is horrible, but the story and the post-campaign stories were great. The raid was amazing, the seasons. Risen was terrible. Haunted was one of the best season stories we ever got, really focusing on the characters. Plunder was near awful, and Seraph was yet again one of the best seasons we had. Lightfall seasons are still ongoing, and that leaves us really with nothing but hope for the future. There's still hope, but it is fading. I love Destiny, don't get me wrong, I love Destiny. I've played the game since the alpha at D1, but it's hard for me to keep up nowadays, if all I'm met with is being disappointed. Shadowkeep disappointed me, Beyond Light barely did anything, and Lightfall disappointed me. Witch Queen is the only story I can't complain about, meaning a quarter of this light and dark chapter was fully enjoyed. It is my fear that the story of the final shape won't meet the expectations and hype that the supposed 10 years of story and lore are built up. My fear is Bungie won't deliver something which will again leave us with more questions and no answers. My current guess is the entire rest of Lightfall's content year will be about revealing the Veil more and how it plays into the grand scheme of the final shape, but that's just one thing. The final shape is the final chapter of this 10-year saga, before an entirely new story starts from the ground up. And what worries me is, what if the Witness's fight isn't all too exciting? If he's just a story boss, that would be underwhelming. He deserves the Oryx treatment and much more, if I'm honest. What if the narrative has more chase and MacGuffin sequences that lead us nowhere and waste our time? What if the expansion doesn't deliver much engagement or reason for players to do things beyond, oh, it could be the end of the world? And what if the seasons to follow just don't deliver like they should? My hope is Season 23 and 24 wrap up the questions Lightfall has left, and that the final shape is genuinely amazing narratively. I hope the Witness is given the treatment that the big nemesis of the series deserves and isn't just killed off after a 1 or 2 phase mission fight. I want to see actual stakes be put against the Guardians, and fuck man, let's see an important character die soon. A member of the Vanguard or Osiris. We need stakes, we need an actual reason to care about what we do that goes beyond they are bad guys and we are good guys. I grew up with the Halo trilogy, so I know for a fact Bungie can deliver these amazing stories. And I just hope they make the 10 years many people have spent with this series worth it. Because a lot of people will look at the final shape as the final chance. With the launch of Lightfall, Bungie was set to introduce player LFG in-game, something that's been requested for years. It's been delayed to the end of the year before the final shape releases. Guardian rank somehow made it through though, a system that has slowed down and locked progression. A system that is meant to fulfill the purpose of guiding players through New Light is the only thing it does right. They should make the quest more upfront, I think. Guardian ranks needs changing. If we're relying on other players to help us progress through this commending system, when, in my experience, I constantly see people never get any commends, how are these people supposed to increase that rank? The concept of the Guardian ranks is great, but the way it was executed wasn't done too well in my own opinion, so I hope Bungie rework it somehow in the final shape so it can flow progression instead of slowing it down. Post the final shape, I'd like to see all the original planets added back, even if they are changed up in their look due to them being stolen or whatever it was. I feel like it's time Bungie went back as well on their whole sunsetting locations in the story. Bring back the Red War, Curse of Osiris, Warmind, bring back Forsaken's campaign. Let people experience these stories so they aren't missing out. Let people explore these planets. If Bungie have decided to not sunset anything again, then clearly the issue of storage isn't something they care about. So let people have fun with the removed expansion stuff. The last thing I want to speak about is the Season Pass model. Destiny 2, out of all games that do the Season Pass model, is probably one of the best, if not the best offer. You get multiple game modes added, you get a weekly story, and if you're lucky you'll get a mission as well. You get 3 exotic armors and 2 exotic weapons, one in the pass and one as a quest. You get new or reskin legendaries and you get a battle pass with 100 paid items and about 40 free items on a separate track for like $10. It's worth it. But, and of course there's a but, the content deliverance needs a rework. The weekly story is great, but we should be getting some kind of mission each week. We should be getting some kind of engaging gameplay beyond the weekly grindable activity each week. And so I hope the engaging story content gets an increase and more of a focus with the seasons going into the new saga. I think the tone of this video will be perceived negatively. I want to state, I'm very excited for the final shape. I don't sound it right now, but I am. I love Destiny and I enjoy playing it. I've been a fan since the very beginning, and someone who has sunk thousands of hours into this franchise, and roughly £610 for every piece of playable content. It's heartbreaking for something to release and not be the sort of quality one expects. I hope the final shape is the best Destiny content we receive in the past 10 years, because if it isn't, I don't feel as if the future beyond it is worth paying for. Thanks for watching. I'll be streaming the reaction to the final shape showcase when it happens, August 22nd. Leave a like and all that shit, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in a bit.